That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing,
And it's good.
nylon. The dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good. The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to the Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
This is Joe Howie.
And the Friars lost another one, this one in really tough fashion, falling at home 60-43 to Seton Hall, unable to get the season sweep. Friars scored 80 points in the overtime victory at Seton Hall earlier this season, now just 43 in the rematch. Obviously, no Jared Bynum, but Joe, does that explain the difference in offense we saw from the first game to this game?
No, it absolutely does not. And to even think about pinning a loss on Jared Bynum is ridiculous. There are so many factors that were on display tonight in what has been Ed Cooley's lowest scoring game since his first season when they only scored 40 points at Georgetown, ironically. But 43 points at home, if I was a college basketball player, I would be ashamed. Absolutely ashamed.
And I don't know. This seems to reflect a failure of the program overall, too, a loss like this, because quite honestly, I don't think this was the question of effort. Nobody really looked like they were playing lazy basketball. The problem was that the offense fell apart. Nobody could get into sets. Like, the defense wasn't good enough. I just wasn't. But you still held them to 60 points. So then it's the offense's turn. And the offense could not score and also could not stop turning the ball over. 16 turnovers. Absolutely inexcusable. And once the three-point shooting dried up even a little bit, and it wasn't bad. It was 6 of 18 on the night. It's a little bit under the season average. Usually you probably hit 7 or 8 of those. So that's not your difference maker. The difference maker is that like we've seen, you couldn't drive, you couldn't hit shots down low, you couldn't get open shots down low, and the offense just failed to function. And the later things got in the game, the harder things got, the more they backed out of any attempt to play a real offense.
Yeah, I think the offense became a problem late in the game. If I'm going to give my completely honest thoughts here, I think the defense was absolutely disgusting. We have absolutely
Agreed.
no answer for the dribble drive, and we've seen this be an issue in the past with teams in the Big East, and Seton Hall put it on full display for the entire country tonight. We cannot guard the dribble drive on the wing, whether it's Gant, whether it's Horkler, Reeves, Nichols. We cannot guard the dribble drive. Every team we play walks into the paint and scores with ease. And then that's not on Nate Watson either, because you can't expect him to guard his man and then guard the wings that are driving into the paint. That's not his responsibility. Our wing defense is awful, and I think I always say this: good defense turns into better offense. Bad defense turns into terrible offense, because then at the end of the game, when you're down 15 at home with 3 minutes left, you're scrambling to find a bucket. So you're not running cohesive sets. You're taking poor shots. You're dribbling too fast. You're dribbling inconsistently. Poor passing, turnovers. I mean, it couldn't have unfolded so cohesively that our poor defensive, and it's not even effort, because you can see the guys are out there trying. It's not like they're lollygagging and guys are flying by them. It's just a lack of talent. Lack of defensive talent is leading to poor offensive choices. That's the storyline of the game.
Mm-hmm. And really, I mean, there's no Nichols for this one. And Horkler did not have a fantastic game on defense or anything, but at least he had a good game on offense. You kind of look at Greg Gant again and Nate Watson to an extent. And Watson, Horkler, and Gant are all somewhat responsible for the failures on defense. Seton Hall scored 38 points in the paint. 38 out of their 60 points were in the paint. I mean, you're just getting abused. They're picking one or two things and they're going to hit you over the head with it time and time and time and time and time and time and time again until you figure out a way to stop it. And the fact that teams have been doing it to the Friars all season pretty much tells you there isn't really a way for the Friars to stop it. I don't know if that's coaching, personnel, player development. I think it's a combination of all three, but that's not going to change.
So I'm going to quote Kevin McNamara and Kevin Farhar, two guys. Kevin Farhar writes for FriarBasketball.com. Kevin McNamara, formerly Providence Journal, now has his own site that he writes for. Both of these guys, in the break since the Georgetown game, mentioned how Ed Cooley called his team soft after the Georgetown loss and how the rebounding numbers told the story. I'm not a highly paid basketball coach like Ed Cooley. I'm not even close to that type of tenure, but rebounding isn't our issue because we were almost even. They out-rebounded us. We out-rebounded Seton Hall by 1. Rebounding is not the issue with this team. Nate Watson had 8. Horkler had 8. The totals were 37-36 Providence. Tied flat at 11 and 11 on the offensive end. 26 defensive rebounds for Providence, 25 for Seton Hall. Rebounding is not the issue. It's post defense. And I'm going to stress that the entire podcast. I'm going to stress that the rest of the season. If we do not play defense in the post, you can kiss the NIT goodbye.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I mean, when the Friars take on UConn, and that's, I think, 2 games away, that is not going to be a fun matchup for Providence. They're going to get absolutely bullied. If a team anything like the Providence team that showed up tonight shows up against UConn, that game will not be close. Because you want to talk about guys that can dribble, drive, rebound, play in the paint, for the 3, the 4, and the 5. Well, that's what UConn does. That's what they bring. And Providence can't stop it. And I think this was, preseason, I think the two primary things we identified in our preview were, one, there is no backup point guard. So if Jared Bynum goes down, the offense is in a really tough spot. And number 2, you lost Khalif Young and Alpha Diallo, 2 of the best defenders this program has seen in a long time and kind of the cornerstone of a lot of the great defenses that have been seen in Providence over the last 4 years. The defense was going to get worse. 1, Bynum did get hurt, so that got realized. And 2, none of the answers have stepped up down low. None of them. None of them have. You expected at least one of them to play at an average level. If one of them was playing at an average level, defensively, this team would be so much better, and they're just not there.
Yeah. I think Noah Horkler has been, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. I think he's on the rise right now. He's been playing well the past couple of games, which is good to see. Nichols, I think, is underused offensively. If you want to replace the scoring punch of Alpha Diallo, I think you can look to Jimmy Nichols. He can get his jump shot at ease. He can hit the 3 ball. We don't draw up a lot of plays for him, and his minutes are inconsistent. And then you look at Greg Gant, who can do some really great things. Like, I think he missed a 3-pointer, got his rebound, and then hit the jump shot. But then he's turning the ball over. He doesn't look where he's passing, and that's probably the main source of his turnovers. And then he'll make the jump shot, and then he'll force a pull-up jump shot. And Donnie Marshall, who was on the call, said, I don't think Greg Gant has the go-ahead to take that shot. Duke, yes. Reeves, yes. Watson, maybe. But for Greg Gant to just get the ball at the top of the key, dribble in, and take a jump shot, you don't have that go-ahead yet. So right now, the 4 spot has been a huge disappointment.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, this is back-to-back games now with David Duke struggling, and I'm not really going to put this on him. He's getting put in a bad spot where, 1, on defense, there's more pressure on him to make up for the missed assignments from everybody else. So he's getting it. That's tough. And then at the other end, he has to play as the top point guard and the top shooting guard at the same time. And quite frankly, he's not a good point guard. He's one of the best shooting guards in all of the Big East. But he's not a good point guard, and that shows. 6 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 turnovers for Duke. That's
the problem.
And 4 fouls.
The problem with David Duke is he's so versatile, but his versatility is almost like a curse right now because at the beginning of the season, you're right, Matt, we said that we always knew that replacing Alpha Diallo would be a tall task, right? Having a point guard makes that task not so demonizing because if you have someone to facilitate the offense and distribute the ball, David Duke's scoring can pick up. And I'm not saying it every time out, but a lot of times if we're playing if we're playing like crap on the wing, David Duke's scoring typically can pick up for it offensively, offense defense swap. However, when David Duke is required to facilitate the offense, one, he can't score because he's too busy trying to set up the offense. Two, it puts him in a very tough spot because if he's the only ball handling guard on the floor, which is the lineup that we saw a lot tonight with the Reeves playing small at the two, then one, if he has to force his own shot, he has to reset it to himself. He doesn't have another guy that he could pass it to that can take over for him. It's all on him. This is what we
Yep.
saw David Duke's freshman year. We played him at the point guard, and quite frankly, he had a disappointing freshman season. He earned the accolade of all freshman team, Big East or whatever that was, preseason freshman of the year, and AJ Reeves had the better season because AJ Reeves played naturally in his position. David Duke is not a point guard. He can handle the ball and he can play there for 10 to 15 minutes a game if you need him to. But to ask him to take over the reins of point guard for the entirety of the season when your starting point guard is out is a very tall task. And that's why this team was not good back in 2018, 2019, because you had a three-headed point guard monster, and we're seeing the same thing resurface this season.
Yep. It's kind of like, what do you call it? Make a football analogy. They always say if you have two quarterbacks, then you actually have no quarterbacks. That's kind of what you're seeing with point guards now. Without Bynum, you've got three different guys who they're trying to have run the point, and none of them can do it. But side note, where was Allen Breed tonight? He got pulled pretty early and only played 13 minutes. Second lowest minutes on the team, with only Croswell playing less of the guys that got time.
Yeah, I have no explanation for that. I mean,
And he didn't score, but yeah, he didn't. I don't know. You didn't notice him when he was in, which isn't really good or bad. Good Iron definitely outplayed him, but I don't know why he's only playing 13 minutes when the offense is playing as poorly as it did in the second half.
Yeah, Bryson Goodine had a good little game, and I mean, this is the most we've seen him play the entirety of the season. And this takes me back once again to that 2018-2019 season where it looks like Ed Cooley is stripping the bench for parts because right now, like Bryson Goodine, that's a guy that you saw a lot in the non-conference. He hasn't really done anything in conference play, and then he comes in, he hits 2 threes. We see how athletic he is with 2 blocks, one on Mamu, one on who was the other guy? Was that Roden he blocked? Yeah, it was
I think
Roden.
here Molson.
Oh, okay. But regardless, 2 blocks for a short guard is pretty good. We saw him play athletically, but this is the most minutes he's played all season. He matched his season high. Well, actually, no. He had a season total of 9 points, and that was his game high today, 9 points. So this is very reminiscent of the comparison I'm going to make here is actually Chris Monroe. I think 2018-2019 season, when we were looking for a scoring punch, Ed Cooley would pull Chris Monroe in for a couple of minutes and give him a couple of jump shots. But otherwise, it was a cluster. You didn't know what was going on the bench.
Yep. I wanted to talk about one of the other things here too. I mean, fundamentals. Friars were 3 of 8 from the free throw line. And both of those numbers worry me. One, you can't be hitting only 3 free throws out of 8. That's unacceptably low. And two, again, with the talent on this team, you should have more than 8 free throw attempts. David Duke can take it to the rim. Nate Watson plays underneath. They got guards that can get down low, and for as bad as the forwards are on defense, they can at least play offense. Horklark only got to the line once, and he missed the free throw. Duke only got to the line twice, and he missed one. And Watson got to the line 4 times and missed 2 of them. Those guys should be getting to the free throw line more than they are. And at this point, it's not the refs. This is a consistent trend. The Friars do not play physically in the paint. They're afraid of the contact. I don't know what it is, but they're not. They used to look for earlier this season. They'd look for the contact, draw the fouls. At least that's how the Friars have done it in the past too. You didn't have great shooters, but you get the offense down low and you make them foul you because you weren't going to make the shot anyway, but you get in a decent position and you hit the shots at the line. Now they're not even doing that. I mean, 18 second half points. What are we doing? What are we doing here?
I'm going to quote Kevin McNamara once again because he tweeted this out with about 5 minutes left in the second half, and I think it speaks volumes to what a lot of Friar fans are probably internally dealing with right now with regards to preseason expectations and conference play results. Quote, Hall doing what it wants to, 53-40. It's about the time that the, quote, this team has so much talent, unquote, crowd opens its eyes a bit wider. I couldn't agree with him more. I think going into the season, we thought that Duke, Reeves, and Watson were going to lead the way, and that all these supporting guys were going to jump on board, and we're going to have Jared Bynum putting up 15 points a game and like 7 assists. You've got
Mhm.
Greg Gant in his second year in the program slamming dunks and alley oops, and it's been the complete opposite. Duke and Watson have been the only constants on this team. Duke's in a slump, which it sucks for us, but you can't say that he hasn't been consistent. Watson has been consistent. Reeves, the story of his career is inconsistencies. And the rest, I mean, without Bynum, there's really a hole at the point, and you can't blame Allen Breed because he's a freshman. So he did have a 4 game stretch of good games. He was due for a bad game. I mean, he hasn't
Yeah,
been in the program for too long, and then everything
but
else, it's just like you don't know what's going on.
they aren't good enough. The players aren't good enough to absorb the hit when somebody has an off night. And you talk about Greg Gant. You talk about disappointments. I don't want to put too much pressure on a kid that young to do too much too early. I don't expect him to be dominating the Big East, despite being a 4-star recruit. He's a good recruit. Not all good recruits immediately dominate or ever dominate. But this is going to hurt to hear this one. He was rated 67th in the class 2 years ago. Do you know who was rated 66th?
Who?
James Booknight, the guy who put up 40 points against Creighton. I mean, that's one of those things that's tough to look at. If Greg Gant, you're not asking him to be that guy. You're asking him to be a starter level player. And I'm not, I mean, he's a college kid. I'm not going to sit here in front of a microphone from hundreds of miles away as a guy who can't play basketball and blame him or tell him he's not doing anything right. At some point, it's on the coaching staff. And I sympathize with Greg. He's gone through a lot of personal stuff in his life that I'm sure set him back. I've been there myself. That's a really tough position to be in as a young college kid. But the fact that the team looked at him and Noah Horchler to play the 4 this season and said, these are our guys. And neither of them has been good, I think is both a failure to identify and develop talent.
Yeah. About Greg and Horkler, I think both of them have a tremendous upside. I think we've seen both of them show glimpses of what the coaches probably see in practice. But I think you're right, back. This goes back to the administration. To ask a sophomore to fill the shoes of Alpha Diallo, a senior who averaged double digits a game and who tested NBA waters his junior year, that is a very tall task to ask a sophomore that averaged less than 20 minutes a game the season before. That's a very tall task. So this is by no means on Greg Gant to
He
ask
should have
him to
been
do that.
prepared better.
Right, to ask him to do that, and then I mean, COVID obviously plays a role in this because they couldn't practice over the summer. But to ask him to do that and then go into the season with him ill prepared, take the reins, leaves you with this hole. Because I think the answer to Alpha Diallo was supposed to be Greg Gant with Noah
Yeah.
Horchler as a supporting role.
Yep. That's exactly what it was supposed to be. And or at least one of them is the guy and the other one is going to be the rotational guy, and they'll swap off. They'll both play 20 minutes. That was kind of the expectation. And then if you want to look elsewhere in the lineup, Reeves, only 4 points tonight. Didn't hit a 3-pointer, 2 of 5 from the field, only 2 rebounds. Didn't really do a lot. I mean, Reeves and Duke combined for 10 points. Horchler had 10 points. Watson had 10 points. And you're telling me Reeves and Duke are only able to score 10 points together?
Is it just me, Matt, or did it look like there were no plays drawn up for AJ Reeves tonight? Because that's what I saw. Until
That's what I saw.
late in the second half, it didn't look like there were any plays drawn for the kid coming off of a 28-point performance on the road. I don't think there were many plays drawn for him tonight.
No. And when they played at Georgetown, the very first play of the game was drawn up for AJ Reeves. It was, all right, we're going to get him going. So here's a shot under the basket, go hit it. And really at no point tonight did I see any plays drawn up for anybody in particular. How many times did you look up and it's all right, well, 10 seconds on the shot clock and nothing has happened in the offense, so you got to make something happen. This looks like the offense of 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I will say, to credit the team, they did a better job of recognizing late shot clock situations. I think Nate and Horkler at least got a shot off. I don't think both shots didn't go in, but it avoided the shot clock violation turnover.
But it's the fact that you're getting that late in the shot clock with no defined offense.
Exactly.
And that's also, like, this team doesn't have a point guard right now, and that's going to hurt any team. But the coaching staff needs to have something prepared. I don't know this is somewhat on David Duke. He's a leader, and I think you'd expect a little bit more from him as a point guard at this point in his career. But there's no way that the coaching staff could look at the depth chart at the start of this season. And it's obvious to identify point guard as a point of weakness. It's obvious if you look at it. And it doesn't really seem like they had a plan for what happens if Bynum can't go. If this is the plan. This is with basically the full season of playing with these guys too. And they've been playing without Bynum for a while now. This is the plan. It gets you 43 points. That's the best that the Friars could put out there. Come on now.
Yep. So I want to transition here. We can talk ad nauseum about this game. I don't really want to. I kind of want to move past this as quickly as possible, but I think we have to talk big picture here.
Okay, let's hear it. What are your thoughts?
So I think this isn't a game that's going to end the season. It's not. It is very, very sour in the mouths of Friar fans right now, and it is very, very disappointing to only score 43 points in your home gym 500 feet away from your multi-million-dollar practice facility. It's very disappointing to do that. However, you already beat Seton Hall on the road. It's not like they swept you. They came in and they gave you a beatdown in your own house, but you did not get swept by Seton Hall. So that is the positive. Seton Hall played with a higher sense of urgency tonight, and we just did not. They needed it more. They wanted it more. Right now, we're 2 games under 500, and we are 500 flat overall.
Yeah, we're tied with Marquette in the Big East standings. We're back down there.
The margin of error over the next 7 scheduled games, potentially 8, is that it? Or is it 6, potentially 7?
It's 7, potentially 8.
The margin of error over the next, we'll call it 8 games, has to be minimal to none. Because the opportunity still sits there that we can go on this late season run and everything can mesh and click and we can make the tournament comfortably. But you have to do all the right things now.
Yeah, there's no messing up.
In the pregame podcast, as I check my notes here, I said it doesn't have to be 9-0. You don't want it to be 5-4. Anywhere from the 8-1 to 6-3 range, you're feeling good.
Yeah. At this point, I don't think that Georgetown game is getting rescheduled unless a different game gets canceled. So let's assume that this is going to be 7 games left.
Okay. So if this is 7 games left, really the only loss you can afford is at Connecticut or at home against Villanova.
Yeah.
You really have to clean house, and that's a really difficult task because St. John's is playing very good basketball right now. Very good basketball. And they're higher than us in the Big East standings right now for a reason. They're playing very well.
Yeah.
You don't have to play. Well. Yeah. You don't have to play teams like Creighton or Marquette again, or Seton Hall for that matter. You do have to play DePaul, who I think is gonna rack up some wins. That might be a hot take, but DePaul has talent. St. John's has talent. This is a very talented
Big East. Don't forget, the Friars came very close to losing to DePaul at home. That wasn't that long ago.
And if DePaul plays revenge ball like Seton Hall did tonight, then we're in for one hell of a game.
Yeah. And that's
if Xavier, go ahead.
I think the Friars can turn things around to a degree against some of these opponents. I think when Bynum comes back, I think the offense is going to look a lot better, but the defense won't. Not really. And like you said, the margin of error becomes basically nothing. So that requires Bynum to come back full strength and everybody to figure out everything at the exact same time. Jared Bynum is not Lawan Pipkins. He's just not. He's not gonna give you that jolt of energy. I'm on KenPom right now. They just updated after this game. The Friars dropped from 64 to 70. Friars are 70th now. Started the season at 56, and after the win against Fairfield, that opening win, the Friars were as high as 46. And the Friars were up to 57 at one point, even during conference play. But 70, that's tough. That's really tough. Last time the Friars were plus 70 was actually before the Creighton game last season. And to be fair, that's actually right before they went on the run to end the season. But man.
I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to control my negative reactions to losses, but the opportunity still sits there. You still have a ton of conference games left. As long as you don't get swept by anyone, I think that's fine. You'd like to sweep maybe St. John's and DePaul, maybe.
You have to go 6-1. That's if you go 6-1, that means you have a win against UConn, either 2 wins against UConn or a win against UConn and a win against Villanova. That is what it's going to take to get this team into the tournament. I don't think anything short of that gets them there. I think we're one. I think if the Friars lose Saturday against St. John's, we're spending the rest of the season on this podcast talking about evaluating this roster for next season.
I mean, if Duke, meaning the Duke Blue Devils, keep playing the way they're playing, the NIT is going to be a lot of fun. But
I think it's been about 50 years since the NIT was a lot of fun.
Listen,
man,
the opportunity is still there, and I'm going to stress that until the final game. The opportunity is still there. That's what's great about the conference and the double round robin. The opportunity is still there. Seton Hall didn't sweep us, so we're not it's not a sense of disparity because we didn't get a win over a team. We split. We beat them at home. They beat us at home. Fine. But now you have to take care of business. You have to have tunnel vision. You have to look ahead. You have to see what's in front of you. You have to look at the road in front of you, see your opponents, and play good basketball. Play the basketball that we saw at TCU, at Creighton, at Seton Hall, against Fairfield, in the second half against Fairleigh Dickinson. Play the Providence brand basketball that fans saw this year. It's because as much as we can talk about the negatives of this game that we just played, we've seen the positives of this team. We've seen the defensive positives. We've seen the offensive positives. This team can be very good. Listen, Kevin McNamara is right. This is not the team from last year. And for anyone to say, oh, this team is better or has a lot of talent, comparing it to last year's team is crazy. It's not last year's team. Do we have 2 of the best players in the Big East? Absolutely. Do we have supporting guys that can step up and really provide a punch? Yes. Are we a top 15 offense in the country? Absolutely not. Do we have Lawan Pipkins and Alpha Diallo again? Absolutely not. But we have pieces and we have abilities to win basketball games and to do it the right way, the Providence way.
It's going to take a lot of stepping up.
Right now, you really got to buckle up.
Right now, this offense is 8th in the Big East in efficiency per KenPom, and has an efficiency that is below the D1 average. The effective field goal percentage is 7th. Turnover percentage is 7th. Free throws drawn, 7th. Offensive rebounding has actually been somewhat of a positive during conference play. It's 5th. And we're the 5th best 3-point shooting team in the Big East, but 9th at 2-point shooting. And 8th in offensive block percentage, 8th in offensive steal percentage. We don't turn the ball over a lot with fouls and travels and stepping out of bounds, things like that. The Friars do just give the ball away way more often than they should, and they get blocked a lot, and they don't hit shots down low, and the three-point shooting is not nearly good enough to make up for that. This isn't like Creighton. Now, I will say, if we want to talk about the road ahead, I tweeted this earlier, and we were texting about it. I know we're on the same page here. Your best five, whether it's starting the lineup or just the guys you go to, the best five, I think, is Bynum, Breed, Duke, Reeves, Watson. I think that's who you have to lean on down the stretch.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think in order to get there, we need Jared Bynum back first. I know there's no timetable for his injury. I know it's supposed to be 4 weeks. It's close to 5 weeks now. I know all the out-of-pocket answers that you have for Jared Bynum from the administration, but what realistically needs to happen is he needs to be back for that. And I know that's a tall task for you and I to wish for, but really the sooner he comes back, the sooner this team starts to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively. Defensively
We
is a
really have
completely different story.
Yeah, we really have no idea when Jared Bynum is going to be back either. I mean, they've been saying day to day for over a month now. So, I don't know. He's been a game time decision for that long. Makes you wonder if he re-injured it. I don't know. They aren't open about this stuff. So all we can do is speculate. Does Jared Bynum still have both of his legs? I don't know.
You think one of them is fake?
Yeah. It's a big conspiracy. They're just hiding it from us.
But
No,
we
but I
drifted
mean,
from the point about that lineup, Matt.
yes.
I think
That's the best five.
that's the best five you can produce. Yes, I agree. Because that gives you ball handling, it gives you outside scoring, and it also gives you the inside punch you need to stay alive with Nate Watson. Now, playing Reeves at the 4 is a very, very interesting matchup because, while yes, this is the comparison I want to make. So, Diallo, when he first started, he played the 2. That was his freshman and his sophomore year. His junior year, he bumped down to the 3. By the end of his junior year, he was playing the 4. AJ Reeves could very well follow a similar path, but albeit abbreviated. Because he started off as the 2, we bumped him down to the 3. He could very well play the 4 on this team, but in a very strategic way. We're not going to have him, boxing out Mamu Kelishvili, who plays the 4, or Jeremiah Robinson Earl for that aspect, but you can have him as that wing, but a small forward kind of wing. So you're playing point guard, shooting guard, small forward, center, and it'll work. It's basically what we did with Alpha Diallo, who, by the way, was 6'6", even though he listed himself as 6'7". He didn't grow. And if you look at all the pictures from last season, Diallo and Reeves are the same height, so it can work. Reeves is a different type of scorer and player than Diallo, but it very well can work, and that might be a lineup that you'd like to see.
Yeah, and here's the thing. At the end of the day, whoever they have been playing at the 4 has not worked on defense anyway. I don't think it's going to get worse there, and Reeves is by far the best scorer of the guys that they could play at that position. And also, if you're playing a zone defense, that's not going to matter as much. So, I think
not to mention, if you have Reeves and Duke playing the 3 and the 4, that is a lot of quickness to defend against the dribble drive, which has been killing our 4-men. Killing them. Kevin Mack wrote it in his latest article that Nichols and Gant were getting torched by the dribble drive, and you saw it again tonight. I think Mamu drove on Gant, and he stepped out of the way. He could have taken a charge on the low block, but he stepped out of the way.
And it goes to say what we've seen with this team. There is no physicality. It's not there. And this is, I don't know. Gant is a guy who plays best in a spread system, except he can't shoot. Horchler is a guy who plays best in a spread system too. He can shoot. The problem is he's not big enough to play in the Big East. Horchler's a role player, and that's fine. The problem is that he is being asked to be more than a role player right now because the team doesn't have other talent. You want Horchler to be your 7th man.
I think you could say the same thing about Gant too. Gant and Horchler together could be very good role players, but you're just asking too much of them. Yeah. Which goes back to the point that you can't make up the talent that was lost.
Yep, and that goes back to what Kevin McNamara was saying about the crowd that says this team is too talented to be playing like this. Well, are they? Is this team actually that talented, or did we just overrate them? Duke, it might be Duke and Watson, I think, are the only two guys who have played up to their talent level. Reeves certainly has not. He's gotten very, very close, but he has not gotten there. Gant has not gotten there. And Horkler and Bynum, Bynum played well when he's played, but he's been injured. Horkler is a guy. I don't think this team was quite as talented as we thought it was going to be.
I think also part of this too is a lot of the fan base expected that Watson and Duke could just carry the load, or Watson, Duke, and Reeves could carry the load and not have any issues. But as we've seen, these are college students. They're not professional basketball players. So after a couple of games, carrying the load takes a toll on you. You look at David Duke. I mean, to a lesser extent with Watson because he's only had one game less than double figures, and he's really exceeded expectations. I think he is like the one piece of this team I can't really get mad at. I really can't find anything wrong with his game right now. Except for when he tipped that in for Seton Hall. I was pissed. But that's the one time all season.
That's about how this game went. That play right there kind of summed things up. Did you know this is actually the lowest number of points Seton Hall has allowed in any Big East game in school history?
Of course it is. We're breaking records all night for Seton Hall. Kevin Willard's 200th win.
Yeah, this is a disappointing night. The season's not over, but this is about the expectation is NCAA tournament. This is basically about as close as you can get to not making that as the Friars can be. The only other way you can make it up at this point, if you're going to start losing games, is if you win the Big East tournament, which, by the way, did come out this week. They are planning to still play that at Madison Square Garden. So we'll get that Friars action. And you never know. We know what the Friars do in March at Madison Square Garden, but I don't know. I mean, we were there 2 years ago when the Friars beat Butler and then immediately turned around and just were overmatched against Villanova. And that's kind of what I think you would expect from the team. I don't know what the bracket is going to look like this year with 11 teams. I think it would be 6 teams. I think it would be 3 games on Wednesday instead of 2, in which case the Friars would definitely be in that at the moment.
It would be 6 teams play on Wednesday.
Yeah, Providence would be playing Georgetown if the season ended right now in a play-in game, and then Friars would play Creighton. So that looks an awful lot like you lose one of those games. I don't think the Friars are going to steamroll anybody in the Big East tournament at the moment.
At the moment, keep in mind, for perspective, we're recording this like seconds after the game, so this is all very, very new, and the taste is very fresh in our mouths. So, of course, we could come out and be cheerful and joyous the next podcast out because we've gotten over it, but as it stands right now, we're not in a good mood.
No. Well, to be fair, also right now, the Friars are 2-6 in their last 8 games. So there's not a lot to be joyous about. The Friars were 7-3 and 3-1 in Big East play at one point this season, and are 2-6 since that point. 9-9 overall now, 5-7 in conference play. I mean, that's just disappointing.
Not to mention, at that point, you just said when we were good, we were 3 points away from knocking off Creighton at home, knocking off Xavier on the road, and everyone on Twitter would have been talking about how many votes we were receiving or whether or not we were ranked too high or too low. That's realistically where we would have been.
And I think, that 3-game stretch, Creighton, Xavier, Marquette, I think really turned the season. The loss of Bynum, you lose that game, then you lose Xavier again, another heartbreaker, and then you can't play with Marquette on the road. And Marquette still at this point has 1 home win in Big East play, I'm pretty sure. And it's that one game. They have 2 now. Sorry, they did beat Butler last night. But I mean, it's disappointing. That's really how it looks right now, and it really seems like the Big East is only getting 5 teams into the tournament at this point. It's in all likelihood, it's going to be Villanova, Creighton, Xavier, UConn, Seton Hall. No Providence, no Marquette, no St. John's.
I'm looking at the Big East standings right now, and I'm thinking how meaningful this game would have been for us. We would have flattened out in conference play and gone a game over 500. For Seton Hall, it would have done the same thing for them. It would have flattened them out in conference play and kept them a game over 500. Or no, it would have flattened them out at 500 overall. But now Seton Hall sits comfortably 2 games over 500 overall and in conference play, while we sit 2 games under in conference and flat overall. If first things first, the next 2 games, the next 2 games, you lose either of them, you go under 500 overall.
Yeah. For the first point since very early on in the season. Have we actually been under 500 at any point? No. No, that would be the first time we'd be under 500 all season.
This would be the first time in recent memory, maybe the past 5 or 6 years, 7 years maybe, that they've gone under 500 overall in overall record.
Yeah, I'm looking back, and at no point in 2018-19 did they do it.
And that team was bad.
And to be fair, there was a lot more buffer because you had way more non-conference games then. So there's something there. But yeah, the Friars have not gone below 500 for a season. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, the Friars could turn this around and pull off a run, but also if Providence keeps playing like this, you probably have 3 guaranteed losses in the 2 UConn games in Villanova, and that means if you lose any other game, you're under 500 for the season. I think going 6-1 and finishing this season over 500 are about equal odds at this point. And KenPom projects the Friars to finish at 12-13. The only 2 games the Friars are projected to win are versus St. John's and at DePaul. The rest it has is losses. And it thinks the Friars pick up one of those games, and that's it.
Woof.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. No, there's a loss, so we're not going to give out any game balls or anything here. And you know the deal with us. We'll be back for the next game, but this is a sour night in Friartown, to say the least. Joe, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, again, with Ed Cooley and the Providence Friars in February, with the thick schedule of games you have ahead, I will continue to say the season's not over, and this is not by any means us writing off the season. But this is a very disappointing home loss, a very underwhelming offensive and defensive performance. There needs to be a lot of improvements going forward if this team wants to sniff the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, this is a much lower key sign off than we usually do, but make sure that you are following us on Twitter at the Flex Hoops, so you can continue to get our episodes. If the Friars do pull off a run, you're gonna want to be right here to listen to us. And if things start to go south, we will start looking ahead to next season. We'll still have fun with it. We're still Friars fans no matter what, so we'll look for the positives. We'll have a good time. We'll make sure we're a good listener for everybody. So make sure you stick with us for the rest of the season, no matter how this goes. Friars lose this one 60-43 against Seton Hall. Now 9-9 on the season, 5-7 in Big East play. For Joe Howie, I am Matt St. Jean. Thank you for listening.
Go Friars.